So when I was eating fruit for those 31 days, I was specifically on the protocol of monofruit. So like one type of food at a time. My Canggu friends, who are carnivores still, like it's very obvious if you look at these Cangguers who are eating meat, they're strong as fuck, they're aggressive as fuck. Like in terms of like they're like going to the gym, maybe they're boxing, they're doing MMA and shit like that. They're bloated. Like you can see it in their face.
Elitom Elamin, that's another one. He's breatharian and he looks so good.
Yo, sit down, let's dig into your spiritual ego. Think you're looking fly, white linen kimono, got your yoni egg in. I think you're ready. Yeah, it's time for Ubud on tea.
This is like our first attempt at a bro episode.
Yeah.
Like two brothers having a conversation. So yeah.
Well, I mean, we started already talking about like food and eating a lot of fruits, and I feel that's a little rabbit hole we've been on together and that we're both passionate about at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So.
Wait, before we start, I do want to say this. Like, welcome to the best podcast that Ubud has ever seen. I'm Lawrence J. This is Alex Lambert, and right now we are wearing from the Zest store, which is known as the Last Tribe. We are wearing a kimono and some of our local Balinese jewelry. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And even though like we don't really eat the food there anymore at Zest. It's so beautiful, but we go like more simple, just fruits, but it's beautiful.
Well, speak for yourself. Sometimes I have a cheat meal, more often than not. But
that's crazy. Now when we have like a nice, what people would think really healthy vegan meal, call it a cheat meal.
Yeah, it's
because we're so healthy.
We're something. We're definitely something around when it comes to food, and I think this is this is the conversation that we're going to have today. At least attempt to have. To really take a look at how our eating habits have changed. I think like discussing why, like philosophy around it, and maybe where they differ, and just go from there.
Yeah. Because, please, everyone at home, take everything very seriously. This is medical advice. No, sorry.
I am not a nutritionist
the opposite.
or a
we
dietitian.
Are not. This is not medical advice.
And this is not financial advice.
Yeah, this is not. And we're... I feel very qualified to talk about nutrition because I did a business school.
And I'm also qualified because I did a yoga teacher training.
That's actually closer though.
That is closer.
Very closer. Well, actually, a lot of the nutrition would be more towards business than yoga in the matrix world. So maybe business school more like with nutrition in the
True,
in
actually,
the world.
that's a really good point. Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. Yeah, we've been on a little journey. I mean, what's been your journey with nutrition, Lawrence?
Like my whole life?
Like, maybe make it more like the past few. Yeah, I mean your whole life.
Well, my whole life I just ate like I had pizza pops. I used to have pizza pops. Like my mom would buy those frozen.
You started with breast milk.
I started with breast milk.
But yeah,
I did. I was breastfed.
Life.
Yes.
Good.
Good. And that's actually as good as it got at that age. Yes. That is the stuff. That is the juice, as we call it. After that, my family's of Russian descent, so there was a lot of like buckwheat, and there was meat and potatoes, and my mom made amazing salads. But I'd say like at some point, I started becoming what we would call conscious of eating, which had me, like I remember the first time like I dove into the idea of vegetarian or veganism. It was like a long time ago, but it was like, I had this moment, and the moment was, if I'm eating meat now, then psychologically, humanity can be manipulated into cannibalism on the mainstream. Like I had this thought. I was living in Vancouver, and I was like, if I'm gonna have this steak or this hot dog, who's to say this is chicken or beef? This could be my best friend. That didn't last long. That kind of like very drastic and like extremist And then I went and like just started like.
Were you afraid that the steak was actually human, or were you thinking of, okay, if I got brainwashed so much that I would be willing to eat a pig, that means maybe one day the society will brainwash us into eating human?
The latter. Like I was aware that that was a wake up point for me. Like first of all, I don't identify as by what I put in my mouth. I don't identify like by like the words vegetarian, carnivore, or vegan. That's not who I am. But I remember at that time being fully aware of the fact that what we are born into is the norm.
Yeah.
And if I was born into eating human thigh, that would be the norm.
I would say, and to support that, as a vegan, I also don't like labels.
Sorry, I was laughing because it's funny. But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I'm going to like fast forward about a year into this. It was about a year ago where I was coming from Canggu to here. Yeah. And when I was in Canggu, I had a 10-month period where I was dating somebody who was a vegetarian. And she said to me, if you eat meat, I will not kiss you. And I was like, easy, no eating meat. So I went for like, and I never ate meat like tradition or like hardcore dogmatically. It was like if I needed some protein, I would like add some meat into my diet. But after I broke up with her, as a ritual, as a declaration to the world, and I was living in Canggu, I started eating meat because everybody around me was a carnivore. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this seems to work. Joe Rogan's doing it. Like I started doing it for like a month or two. But then I moved to Canggu to Ubud because I had an injury. And I was trying to find any way to heal the injury. And Jonathan was like...
Jonathan Ailes.
Yeah. He said to me that it's possible that I'm getting inflammation and mucus from all the meat I'm eating. I was also thinning. My hair was also thinning at the time. And I was like, how do I stop this? And he started telling me about having like various detox protocol that is surrounded around fruit.
Oh, that's when he kicked you into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, he basically kicked me into the rabbit hole.
You've been fine too.
Yeah. So that's a whole other story with Jonathan, but like I started speaking to one of my friends, Sia. He introduced me to fruit, and I did fruit only for 31 days. And I didn't know what I was doing other than I was going to just eat fruit for 31 days and see if it worked. And what happened was, in that process of eating only fruit for 31 days, I had all kinds of like rabbit holes open up that I wasn't ready for. And Hasna...
Sia, who got back to meat also.
Yeah, Sia is now eating meat. So like
it's interesting in the community to see people like... That's why I like to stay humble and not too labeled. Because I've seen people say like do something and really feel comfortable with a way. And
own it and identify by it.
And a few months... And I'm not saying it's Sia, by the way. I'm just saying in general. And see a few months later, and see a few months later that person doing something quite different.
Yeah. So I went fruit for 31 days, and like things started to shift. Like I was feeling differently. I was clearing up. I just felt good. But I would say more interesting than that, because all of a sudden...
You got even more good looking.
I got even more good looking. My eyes became clear. I became more blue-eyed, like all that kind of stuff. But what was more interesting to me than the fruit was I was talking to Hasna, and I didn't even know her at the time. I just like she was just a massage girl around town, and I like just wrote her because I wanted a massage. And this is what happens in Ubud. You write somebody and you're like, I want a massage with you, and she's like, wait a second, I have to see if we connect. So we started having these long WhatsApp conversations, and I never ended up getting a massage with her. Months later it happened, but she said to me, because I told her about my injury, she's like, have you ever considered dry fasting? And I was like, no, I had never considered dry fasting. That is super fucking extreme. Like water fasting, like maybe I would consider. So she turned me on to Trevor, Fasting with Trevor, who is this amazing dude on Instagram. And he does like 20-something day dry fasts and stuff like that. And while I'm fruiting, I dived into the dry fasting world. And I found Trevor, and I was like, this guy is cool. I really resonated with the things he would say. And then I found, now you guys, like, I spoke a little bit about my Russian background. The dry fasters in the world predominantly live in Russia. And there's a guy, Sat Marga, which you can find
Russians, they like the extreme.
They love the extreme, like stand on nails, dry fast, and vodka. Not at the same time. And Sat Marga had these like long hour, 2 hour interviews on dry fasting that were in Russian, and because I could listen to them, I understood, and I became like a source for dry fasters because he was like the ultimate, like he was the ultimate guy. Like I could watch him because I understand Russian, and I started just getting into like the idea of dry fasting. And I guess like I'd done intermittent fasting before, so while I was fruiting, I would do like a 36-hour dry fast once a week, and I was that was like kind of like the beginning of it for me. You had been on this road for like since I met you.
Yeah, I've done like, for me it was reading *Sapiens*.
Okay.
You know *Sapiens* by
I mean,
Yuval Noah
it's a
Harari.
mainstream book, right? Yeah.
And I loved it. It was part of my awakening journey.
What do they say about food there?
Well, the whole book is really interesting because it's about having a new, fresh perspective on the world. And one of it was about especially how we treat animal when we eat factory farmed meat, for example.
Oh, so you were like moral, like you were like how we treat them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I came from the moral angle, and then came the health.
You're a good man.
Thank you.
You are. You're a good man. You're a big-hearted man. I went there and then I left that place and I just went down and started eating steak and cheese.
And I'm French. So
was that? Yeah.
It's weird to turn vegan when you're French. So I read it and I was like, okay, if I like a lot of things that I feel are really healthy is to really try a new perspective. Like imagine you're almost an extraterrestrial being that lands on Earth and be like all that childlike vision. Is that normal? Does that make sense? And then I was like, with fresh eyes of like how we treat animals. I think I watched, I don't think it was Conspiracy, but there's another one. What the Health?
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, that's not right. Thank you, bro.
No problem.
Yeah, we're very tribal today. It's like a Huichole bracelet from my friend Malvina. Beautiful. And yeah, feeling okay. That's weird. I don't want to participate in that. So, but I also transitioned pretty gently. So I got like, I wrote an article actually that's online why I became 80% vegan, and then more and more. That was 4 or 5 years ago. And also then got into the health, and fast forward with that same logic. I went from being mainly vegan to eating mainly raw to now eating mainly fruits. And it's the same logic because to me it's going back to that innocence where, okay, we're on Earth, we have trees that grow fruits. They're beautiful, they're juicy, they get ripe. Even if you don't take them, they will fall and die, so you're not like killing anything. And it just makes sense. And yeah, if you put in front of a child like a juicy orange or a rabbit, do you think the child would go for the rabbit and rip the flesh and eat it? Like,
or even the carrot, rip it from the ground.
And even a lot of things in the raw food, it's like, so you're putting this that's been grown in a different country together. It's just doesn't feel intuitive, right? And so with that same logic, I went from removing things like the more with the moral, and then the health was just keeping things simple and what felt just simple and intuitive, and going back to, have we been mindfucked this much that we think this or that super complicated thing is right for us? And that's where I'm at now. just in case. I know I've seen people change, and I've changed my mind and evolved. So that's the what I'm at the moment. It makes sense for me that if we eat, it should be the simple thing that nature gives us. Fruits, maybe sometime a bit of nut, a bit of vegetable in small quantities, that can make sense. But yeah, that's where I'm at. If we eat. That's a whole other conversation.
I want to track it back a little bit because I have like my theories, and I don't claim to know anything, but I do have these ideas in my head. And the thing that made sense about fruit for me, I love that Claudio's here. He's just like, these motherfuckers. Like what the fuck? But the thing about...
No rice? Really? That's not in Bali, we say if you don't have rice, it's not a meal.
Exactly. And but it was, how long ago did we, before this happened to us, we understood that rice is the highest content of sugar, that it breaks down, but at the same time, I was trying to stay away from carbs. Like I was in keto land.
I tried keto in Australia, but then 3 years ago I'd be eating tempeh and white rice, and for example here all the tempeh is genetically modified, it's a lot of soy, and then the rice genetically modified, sprayed with pesticides. So I was like, oh, I'm healthy, I'm vegan, but
that's what I want to get to, because tempeh is a really good example of this, and a metric for it is that the fruit wasn't just fruit. I was monofruiting, and that introduced something brand new to me. And that is that, first of all, we're a water pipe organism, which means we are made for water. And fruit is the closest food to water. And even with fruit, if you're mixing fruit, if you're eating, for example, banana and watermelon, your body's not going to digest it easily. It's going to digest it.
And again, it makes sense. In nature, usually you'd find a tree with one fruit. You wouldn't make a fruit salad.
So when I was eating fruit for those 31 days, I was specifically on the protocol of monofruit. So one type of food at a time. I would always check how long does it take for a banana to digest? 40 minutes? Okay, then I might have a mango or whatever, papaya in an hour later, right? But when I started learning about digestion, I started feeling better. I started feeling lighter. I started to realize, it has nothing to do with anything other than how quickly can our body get it in and out. Meat takes days to get out of your system. The food that you would eat at any restaurant takes hours, if not days also. And that's when I realized it was a conversation about digestion, not a conversation about food. And what is the thing that exhausts us as humans more than anything?
Eating?
Digestion. And unconscious sex. But that's a whole different conversation that we would have had an episode ago. So when I started understanding that, I was like, this makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. And here's the other thing. I'm here's because I can go on and on and on. My Canggu friends, who are carnivores still, it's very obvious if you look at these Changuers who are eating meat, they're strong as fuck, they're aggressive as fuck, in terms of they're going to the gym, maybe they're boxing, they're doing MMA and shit like that. They're bloated. You can see it in their face. They're carrying...
We talked about it earlier. So the episode before with Kevin, we talked about GP Sears, for example.
Yeah, totally.
Which I love, right? But you can see he's turned carnivore, and you can watch the videos.
You can see.
It's like he's come from Ubud to Canggu, right?
Yes.
So it's you can see the videos before when he's he was probably more into the raw foods and all that, and now he's definitely more buffed.
Yeah.
But he's also, you can see the face is pretty inflamed, so it's trade-off.
Yeah. So I can see that in my friends that are doing it. I can see it in myself as soon as I go down that route. So look, I go and I still eat other foods. I don't think I'm ever gonna touch dairy again. Maybe raw dairy at some point, but I don't eat cheese because cheese, I associated it to the thinning of my hair, and since I've been living like this, which is under a year, my hairline is it's all back. I'm you can look at my Instagram, there's it just doesn't look good. I was falling apart. Now I'm back. I don't think I'll at least, it's a pretty hard thing to say right now.
I have a friend who had good results with that's what people do in Ubud, putting pea in his hair too.
Really?
Yeah.
Like he would. Do you know where I can get pea?
I think pea.
Like
it's really rare. You need to buy it from pharmaceuticals, I think, or something. It's like patented. Or...
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it's natural. I think you need to. Yeah, it's quite expensive.
That's really interesting because like sometimes I watch Ubud on acid, and those guys make fun of that guy. Actually, we'll talk about him later because I don't think we're done about food, but I do want to hit that.
Not.
Yeah. But anyhow, so for me, it was like digestion. It was like watching myself, and I was also looking at other people and being like, they're inflamed. They're like carrying waste, and everything like.
Not judging, of course.
I was in Canggu. I'm not judging at all. Like to each their own, and if you like being inflamed, like why not? Like I sometimes choose inflammation when I choose food as entertainment, which I do.
Yeah.
But food, like a restaurant food, Pierre's gonna kill us. He's gonna kill us. Whatever. Food is entertainment. Like, wait.
Well, actually, just to go back on the Pierre is gonna kill us. One thing though that you lose when you stop eating this kind of food is the social aspect of it.
Totally.
But one thing that saves that is a tea house, because then we can gather around some tea.
That's true. When we were prepping this episode, something that you said it's not like this is not for human consumption, like when you were talking about different foods.
Yeah.
And I want to point this out because I really like I came across as like very like staunch. We as humans are omnivores, and what I mean by that is that if I wanted to, I could take this glass and swallow it right now. Like I could break the glass, put it in my mouth, like we see like magicians do, and I can swallow.
Yeah, but that's not what you call omnivorous. It's like many animals would go out of what they should eat. So if you're a carnivore animal and you're really starving, you can eat something else, but you're still carnivore.
Right. Okay. So we as humans choose to eat whatever you choose to eat avores. Like we could put metal in our mouth and like.
Yeah, but the evors is more like what are you thriving on?
Oh well, then we're not. Well, okay, then thriving. That's a whole other conversation. Yeah. But we are choosers. Like we choose, and most of the food that we do is for like we choose based on taste. Like what is my tongue like? Okay. Or what do I associate from childhood because mom and dad fed me this? And then we have an emotional aspect to it.
That's the thing, because also what I could feel from my experience is that my taste got hijacked by sugar, salt, spices, and actually through especially that monofruiting, there is a rediscovery of the amazing taste and simplicity of nature's candies. Fruits. Right? And I'm still in that transition of going away from like, I need the crunchy and the salt and the this and the that, and just appreciate a good piece of fruit. And I just feel that's coming back to nature, where I just feel like we've been hijacked, almost like played on with taste.
For sure. I think so too. I also find that this show, like, I wonder like how many people are going to watch it and be interested in it.
Yeah.
Just because like it's one opinion, because we're very similar.
Well, yeah, but I did a business school.
Oh yeah, you did go to, and I did a yoga teacher training.
Well, it's just been interesting for us going into this rabbit hole. I'd say I don't want to make it too much like nutrition, because that's not expertise or something. That's not what it's about. But I think what's interesting is that we are challenging
the norm.
Just having new views on that. And we've looked also into, that's why we brought the dry fasting. Like, do we actually really need to eat? Do we need to sleep? And
we've had that conversation.
And this goes also like, okay, when you start being on fruit, you probably eat less, you feel you need less. And then if you live in places that are less polluted, you feel, okay, maybe I need to eat less, get more delight. Then when you eat less, you need to sleep less. Like people who do long dry fasts, like 9 days, 10 days, they say, oh, I don't need to sleep anymore. And it's just a totally new way to live, where to me, I'm really about letting go of some of my needs. And then you step into, I don't need to sleep as much. I don't need to eat. Maybe I eat by pleasure, but I don't really need to. And then when you don't need to eat and you live in a place like Bali where you can also sleep outside because it's warm and stuff. It's like you don't really need anything. You know, like why people work, what's the fear? I don't have something to eat. And then when you have that, like it's beautiful. So again, like for me, I'm like just new to that. So, you know, I can feel like that can be triggering because it's like, okay, what are you talking about and all that. So it's just a path I'm excited to discover.
Yeah.
And I just want to put the bigger picture of it also of just like going towards freedom, challenging what we think are basic needs, and maybe what's behind around controls or addiction.
Yeah, I think for me, what I'm really playing with is how can my body be a self-healing machine? And when you're talking about being hijacked, it's like the term that Josh brought up in the episode a couple episodes ago about sense making. Like the way that we make sense of the world has to do with food. We have been brought into this, you know, of like not only eat 3 times a day, you have your grandmother and your mom saying you can finish your meal or you're not gonna grow up. You know, you're gonna be small. And
sleep 8 hours a night.
Sleep 8 hours, yeah, like
Who
that.
knows? I haven't really pushed on this one, but that's an interesting one too.
That's another one. But we know that the army does it. We know that like the Israeli army, they like torture people. Well, they train their soldiers to get up and stuff like that. So we know that there's different elements of this in extreme parts of culture. But I think for us, this is like a really interesting conversation. And I think like in terms of self-healing, yesterday I was in Canggu. I stopped by a place to get a snack.
Yeah.
The lady looked at me and she's like, "Where have you been?" I said, "Ubud." She's like, "Welcome." She's like, "You've lost so much weight." I'm like, "Well, no, I've lost so much waste." Because I've had like I've been inflamed. Basically, it's been mucus and it's been inflammation in my system that like as I cleared it through, I look thinner.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really good point because for me it's like I want to transition towards more purity in general, and that can be eating fruits. Then maybe it's eating less, but I want to keep my strengths. It doesn't have to. Like there's different metrics, you know. Like a lot of people who went on fruits, for example, maybe they can do more pull-ups, but they can't lift as much. So, but overall, I want to stay like I know a lot of people who went that route and then become super skinny. And it's kind of like detachment from the body. Well, I want to keep really being with my body and feeling, okay, I'm doing that not just as a spiritual quest. I want to be closer to God and detached from the body. I want that also to be closer to the universe or whatever. But I also want to be super healthy.
Balanced.
And super vital.
Chris Manley.
Yeah, because a lot of people, exactly. So, and there are a lot of people actually I look to do that. I'm going to interview a guy called Josh X in a couple of days.
Sweet. Who's
doing bodybuilding while on the fruit, and that's inspirational because there's also a lot of people, especially around Ubud, who like, for example, I saw photos of Tahir Kawal, my friend Daniel, the tea server, also did that, who kind of went that spiritual quest and went like, almost breatharians, but then really became super skinny and detached from the body. That's not, I think that has its own beauty, but it's not my quest for now.
Yeah. I love the idea of dry fasting as a spiritual practice and also as a self-healing practice. I also love the idea that you're bringing up right now of like living on limited food and fruit and juices and still working out.
Yeah.
And that's something that there's very few examples of. Chris Manley is like, he barely eats. He's like in the breatharian kind of realm. But that's something that really excites me, and like as an idea.
Yeah. If you look at Victor Truviano, so not drinking or eating for like I think 16, 17 years, he still does tours, but he looks like
tools. What's that?
Like going around places and so
tours,
he's still like
tours.
working. But he looks very, not let's say for me, and that might be ego, but not like I want to look. But Elitom Elamin, that's another one. He's breatharian and he looks so good, man.
So I think first of all, it's important that we say we're like exploring these things, and like I might feel strong about it, but if I didn't feel strong about it, I wouldn't have explored it so deeply. I think that the thing that really strikes me in terms of like who I am now versus who I was a year ago is a thought that I remember. I know one of my friends, this guy Dmitry Lapshinov, who's a Russian teacher, and he lived 4 years on just water. And when I shared that with my brother-in-law Andrew, who lives in Canada, he was like, impossible, not possible, you can't live without food. And well, I've lived without food and with water for 5 days. Like, but in the, I love using this term, that the sense making that we've been taught, you can't do that. Like, it's like 36 hours and that's it. And look, what's actually dying inside of you is the parasites, as opposed to like you and your soul. So it's an interesting conversation.
I think it depends also on environment and things like this. So I think some people, if they were to do 5-day dry from a Western diet, they might die.
Yeah, I think they
so
you have to prep and move in that direction.
So that's why non-medical advice.
Yeah, this is not medical advice,
research.
but he did go to business school.
Yeah, so
this could be financial advice.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's the thing also, is dry fasting, there's not much to sell you.
Well, that's the thing. And like some people I hear like do something called looping.
What's that?
When you're only drinking what these people call your urine.
Urine?
Yeah, like, I don't know where to get some, but imagine you pee in a cup.
Pee in a cup.
Pee in a cup. And that's
like a cup of pee.
A cup
Let's
of
have
pee.
a cup of pee.